to say that according to the last 3 elections in Butler County, there have been a higher percentage of Republicans in Butler County each consecutive election. And if we go by Debbie Lundstrom's totals, we're at 74%. So that's not too bad. This year, and we will miss him, but we must move on, and his legacy will continue. Next on our agenda is the chairman of the Missouri Republican Party. His name is John Hancock, and I'm sure nobody's ever heard that name before.
Yeah.
At least no historians, anyway. John Hancock's a good friend of mine. We have been friends for a couple of years now. We've been through some interesting roads, and I believe that the Missouri Republican Party is in good hands with John Hancock, and he's going to give us the state of the GOP.
Well, I'm very, very, very blessed to have a man like Eddie Justice as a leader in this community. He is one of the stars in our party, and someone that many county chairs look to for guidance and advice, and what you all have accomplished in Butler County is remarkable. We need to replicate it all across the state. I got involved in politics when I was 13 years old, working for a state representative campaign, and I got involved because it was fun. Politics is fun. Knocking on doors, meeting voters, getting yard sign locations, licking envelopes. We used to have to do that. We used to have to lick the stamps too. When I got involved in politics. And it was just a lot of fun. And as I grew up and got through college, I got elected to the state legislature, and I got to serve with one of the very greatest leaders I've ever been privileged to know. He is a remarkable man and a phenomenal leader. And I was pleased to vote for him as our leader in the State House of Representatives. I think you may know him, Mark Richardson. Woo! Just one of the highest quality people I've ever met in my life. And politics is fun. But here we are in 2016, and we're not doing this because it's fun. We're doing this because we have to save America. Our nation has fallen so far, slidden so far. We've seen our moral value infrastructure crumble and collapse under our feet. We've seen our economy taken over by a federal government. We've seen the greatest onslaught of socialism that this nation has ever seen in its history. We must save America in 2016, and there is nothing short of victory that will do that. You're about to meet five extremely good, decent people, great leaders. I've gotten to know each of them, and I can tell you that each of them are phenomenal people. Many of you have already decided which one of them you're going to support for governor. Many of you haven't made that decision yet. And one of the reasons why we've got 6 or 7 really good people running for governor, and we've got, 115 people running for president, whatever it is. One of the reasons we have so many good candidates this year is because all of us recognize that the country is at stake. The life of America is on the line, and it has driven people to get involved like they've never gotten involved before, and that's why these people are running for governor. And I'm going to implore you, if the candidate you like most doesn't win that primary, please do not go away. We need you. We must take this governor's office back. We've only had it for the last 24 years. And there's been a lot of damage done in this state under Jay Dixon. And we must take the governor's back. So will you commit tonight to support the Republican nominee after the August primary? So, just briefly, what we're doing with the party this year, our entire grassroots infrastructure of the Missouri Republican Party was based on telephone lines. We would call people on the phone and ask them who they were voting for, what party they were. Those days are over, and we can no longer afford to do voter contact the way we have done it for the last 40 years. And so we're in the process right now, the Missouri Republican Party, of modernizing our voter infrastructure. And what we're going to do is kind of a throwback to the good old days. We're going to sign you all up to be precinct captains in 2016. Now, it's not the precinct necessarily where you live. It's the precinct that's in here. And what we're going to do, we're developing the technology right now. By November of this year, it will be finalized and rolled out, and we will come train everybody in the state that will participate. We want you to build your own precinct and make a commitment that you're going to communicate with these people. We'll give you an application that will allow you to do it. You're going to communicate with them, give them information and updates. Don't overload them, but send them important information that they need to know. And then come election day, you're going to have a tool to be able to text or email or call your precinct and say, hey, polls open at 6 a.m. Please text me after you vote. And then at 10 a.m., haven't heard from you. Text me after you vote. And then at noon, hey, have you voted yet? If so, let me know. 3 o'clock, I can't believe you haven't voted. What's the matter? And then, of course, at 5 o'clock, I'm coming over. So, and we're going to identify. We have a target of 300,000 Republican voters that are going to be hooked up to individual volunteers and turned out on election day. And if we do that, friends, it will be the largest get out the vote effort in the history of our party. Will you participate? This election is about saving the country. It's not about a personality. It's not about an individual. It's about saving the country. Conservative principles will save this country. God, in His hand, will save this country. Please sign up and say that.
All right, we're down to the nitty-gritty and what we're all here for. We are very fortunate in Butler County to have a young Republican that has made a huge difference over the last 8 years, 10 years. He's not much older than that, so. Mitchell Davis is in his second year as the American government teacher at Poplar Bluff High School. He was the campaign director. I'll give him that title. I know he did a lot of work, so he's earned it, but he was the campaign director in Todd Richardson's first election. And so he walked a lot of miles, put up a lot of signs, and knocked a lot of doors. He has been active in Republican politics, served 3 years as a legislative aide in Jefferson City with former Senate President Pro Tem Rob Mayer from Dexter. Graduated from Poplar Bluff High School in 2010 and received a bachelor's degree in history from Central Methodist University in 2014. Mitchell is dedicated to the cause that we hold dear. And he is our moderator tonight, and he will introduce the candidates as they have drawn the order, and he will ask the questions, and we really appreciate his service. Let's give him a round of applause.
At this time, of our gubernatorial candidates will join us in front of the room.
Oh yeah, Peter. Yeah.
Seems like a lot of work.
Oh, really?
Good evening. I promised my students we wouldn't have a filibuster, so we'll make sure that we follow the time frame. Tonight's forum will begin with a reading of the candidates' biographies, followed by their 2-minute opening remarks. Then 4 questions will be asked, where each candidate has 90 seconds per question to respond. No rebuttals or follow-up questions will be permitted. The forum will end with the candidates' 2-minute closing remarks. When candidates have 10 seconds remaining, the timekeeper will hold up a yellow card. Whenever time has expired, a red card will be displayed. Prior to the forum, each candidate's representative randomly drew for the order in which he or she would speak this evening. I would like to remind spectators that no audible speaking, applause, demonstrations of support, or opposition to any candidate or issue, or waving of signs will be permitted. Spectators will be given an opportunity to applaud the candidates collectively as a group at both the beginning and end of the forum. At this time, please join me in welcoming our candidates to the first 2016 Missouri Republican Gubernatorial Candidate Forum. Our first candidate is Catherine Hanaway. Ms. Hanaway was born in Schuyler, Nebraska, and grew up in rural Nebraska and Iowa. She graduated from Creighton University in 1987 and in the top 10% of her law class at Catholic University of America in 1990. She moved to Missouri to begin her professional career. After volunteering for Republican campaigns in the early 1990s, she joined U.S. Senator Kit Bond's staff in 1993 and managed President George Bush's campaign operations in Missouri in 2000. Hanaway was first elected to the Missouri House in 1998. She led Republicans to their first legislative majority in 48 years in the 2002 election. She was elected the first female Speaker of the Missouri House in 2003 and served 2 years. She served as the U.S. Attorney for the Eastern District of Missouri from 2005 to 2009. She is currently in private practice with Bush Blackwell LLP in St. Louis, where she lives with her husband Christopher, daughter Lucy, and son Jack. Welcome, Ms. Hanaway.
Thank you for that wonderful introduction, Eddie. Thank you, and thank you to all the organizers. Thank you all for coming out tonight. And I apologize if I am a little hoarse. I have a little bit of a cold, and I haven't quite figured out a ladylike way to sit on the stool yet. But what I can tell you is that for the last several years, my husband Chris, who's here, and I have been doing what most Missourians do. Working and raising our 2 kids. I'm lucky enough to have my son Jack here tonight, my parents here. And we've been worrying about the future because we're concerned that the liberal policies coming out of Jefferson City are literally driving jobs out of this state. And I understand why so many Missourians are tired of career politicians who run over and over again and don't get anything done. I haven't run for office in 11 years. But when I did run for office and hold office, I got things done. I led the effort to transform the Missouri House from Democrat-controlled for 48 years to Republican-controlled, and I became the first Republican speaker in 50 years. I'm still the only woman to ever hold that job. But more importantly, I supported concealed carry, and we passed it, making it the law for the first time in Missouri's history. We ended public funding of abortions, and we beat back the Democrat governor's repeated attempts to raise your taxes. Then I moved on, and I became a federal prosecutor. In that office, I shook things up. We emphasized the prosecution of meth cooks, child abusers, and put greater emphasis on prosecuting the worst criminals in every rural community. I prosecuted over 4,000 cases. I'd like to bring that leadership and those conservative values to the Missouri governor's mansion. It's time to end the overreach of the federal government into our state's business. What does that mean? It means we say no to Common Core. It means we say no to expanding Obamacare through Medicaid, and we certainly say no to the EPA running our businesses and our farms. With your help, we can make Missouri's future even brighter than it is today. Thank you.
State Senator Bob Dixon of Springfield served 8 years in the Missouri House before being elected to the Senate in 2010. Dixon serves as chairman of the Senate Judiciary Committee. He is only the third non-attorney to have served in this position during the committee's 193-year history and the first since the 1830s. Twice his House colleagues elected him as Majority Caucus Chairman from 2004 to 2008. During his final term in the House, Dixon served as Chairman of the Transportation Committee from 2009 to 2010. Dixon also is an adjunct instructor in Drury University's Leadership Studies program, and he has more than 20 years of experience in banking and financial services. A 1987 graduate of Christian Schools of Springfield, he earned a Bachelor of Science degree in Business Administration from Drury University in 1997 and a Master's of Education in Human Services degree from Drury in 2009. Dixon and his wife Amanda have 3 daughters.
Thank you. It is a pleasure to be with you tonight. My wife Amanda and I, as Mitch said, live in Springfield with our 3 girls where we grew up. But my roots run deep here in this part of the state as well. In addition to my father, 4 generations of my family worked the land here on Crowley's Ridge. We deeply love Missouri and her people. And we want our grandchildren, when we have them, to be able to experience the same opportunities, the same freedoms, more importantly, that you and I have enjoyed. Now, I've been put to the test in the legislature. I'm known in a big way for really 2 things. First, I'm a principled conservative. I have a deep faith in Almighty God and very deeply held convictions. And secondly, I am ready, willing, and able to work with anyone to better our state. And because I've done that and built relationships, I've been able to stand before you tonight and say, I've actually gotten the job done on some of the conservative principles that we care about. I have an accomplished record on things like shrinking the size of government, reducing regulation, and enacting meaningful reform that we can talk about more this evening. In 1979, Ronald Reagan said that America needed a spiritual renewal, a renewal of the American spirit. If that was true then, it's really true today, and I believe it is. I'm uniquely positioned and uniquely prepared to lead the charge, to win back the mansion for our party, and to bring Missourians together with sensible, conservative solutions so that we can renew Missouri's spirit. It's wonderful to be with you, and I look forward to getting better acquainted. Thank you very much.
For timing purposes, I would like to remind spectators that we will hold applause for all candidates at the very end. The next candidate is John Brunner. Mr. Brunner was born and raised in Missouri and lives in St. Louis. After serving as an infantry officer in the U.S. Marine Corps, Brunner engaged in business for more than 3 decades. He purchased a family manufacturing business in the mid-1990s and grew the consumer products company, expanding sales to every major retailer in the United States. In 2006, he led the merger with his major competitor, with the result that the company became the largest personal care private label company in America. His leadership as chairman and chief executive officer continued until his retirement in 2009. He is dedicated to conservative causes, was a U.S. Senate candidate in 2012, and is personally involved in worldwide Christian missions and relief organizations. Brunner graduated with a BS in Management from Harding University and an MBA from Washington University in St. Louis. He and his wife Jan have been married 38 years. They have 3 children and 9 grandchildren. Mr. Brunner.
Thank you very much. And I got to correct one quick error. 39 years. My wife won't make me forget about that if I don't get it right. So next year will be 40 years. I think in the Bible that's the number for testing. Anyway, it's good to be here. In the Marine Corps, we would say and have a challenge: lead, follow, or get out of the way. And I'm ready to lead and do whatever we can to get this state back on the right track. I feel privileged to have served our country as a United States Marine Infantry officer, as a platoon commander in the Mediterranean, North Atlantic, East Coast, and West Coast. And folks, I had the incredible privilege of working with some of the finest leaders in this country. inspired with that leadership, took it back to a small family business. Now this business was crumbling, it was falling apart, unfortunately. A business that my grandfather started back in 1908. And he had a vision, a dream to have this business. He moved here to Missouri, the center of America, where he could have distribution of the consumer products all across the state. Well, Jan and I packed up our car, drove back from North Carolina. We got into that plant. We got the shovels, the brushes, the brooms, the wrenches, the WD-40, and we did everything we could to turn it around. There's a lot of stories behind a small business and small ranching and small farming and retail shops. We had a privilege to be part of that American dream. During this time, we've had 3 children and 10 grandchildren. It's unbelievable, the challenges ahead. At the same time, I met my wife in church. I've been involved in Christian missions. It's a special place in my heart. I spent a lot of time in Africa, the Philippines, and around the country. But right now, I believe the mission field is right here in Missouri. And finally, I've been a lifelong constitutional conservative. I had a chance to say hello to Phyllis Schlafly yesterday, and it was in 7th grade I passed around the book, A Choice Not an Echo. I will continue to fight the good fight. I'm looking forward to serve. I'm looking forward to a great victory here, November 2016.
Lieutenant Governor Peter Kinder was raised in Cape Girardeau and attended Cape Girardeau Public Schools and continued his education at Southeast Missouri State University and the University of Missouri at Columbia. He graduated from St. Mary's University School of Law in San Antonio, Texas in 1979 and was admitted to the Missouri Bar. From 1981 to 1983, Kinder was a member of U.S. Representative Bill Emerson's Washington, D.C. staff and then worked as an attorney and real estate representative for Drury Industries. In 1987, he became associate publisher of the Southeast Missourian newspaper in Cape Girardeau. Prior to his election as lieutenant governor in 2004, Kinder served 12 years in the Missouri Senate. Kinder is a member of the United Methodist Church, Beta Theta Pi, Missouri Farm Bureau, Cape Girardeau Chamber of Commerce, and Lions Club. He is active in many civic causes, including United Way, Nature Conservancy, American Cancer Society, and Boy Scouts. Lieutenant Governor Kinder.
Thank you, Mitchell. Thank you, Mitchell. As one whose forebears on my father's side arrived in the Missouri Territory in this corner, the southeast corner, in the year 1800, it's great to be back home. You know, I went to Ferguson, Missouri on the 12th of July, the hottest day of the year today, to announce my candidacy for governor. There were several reasons for doing that, and among them was that I want this campaign for governor to be a Republican campaign like no other. Now, whoever is nominated by our party, whoever wins that great honor of being nominated to take our banner into the fall campaign next year, will clean up across rural Missouri, counties like this. But I think we have to be the party of Lincoln, and I think I have a vision that makes us the party of Lincoln, that goes into the urban core, that goes into hurting communities in the urban core, and speaks to minorities and speaks to people who look like us, and says, we are the people who have the solutions to your problems. How is it working for you to vote 70 straight years straight Democrat? How do your neighborhoods look? How do your streets look? How are your schools doing in educating your children and your grandchildren? They're failing across the board. There's an explosion of violent crime under this governor and this attorney general. And my campaign has been the only one that's talking about it. I have a vision to make Missouri great again that involves restoration of our state's business climate, passing tort reform again like we did a decade ago, moving ahead on right to work, hopefully this Wednesday with the override, but if not, it's priority number one when I get there in January 2017, along with reducing the state's tax burden on our job creators, our small businesses. I have a vision to make Missouri great again, and I ask you to join me in that effort. And in an effort that goes into every neighborhood and competes for votes that Republicans usually don't even ask for. Thank you very much.
Randy Asbury was elected a state representative in 2010 and served one term. Asbury was born and raised in Fayette. After graduation from Fayette High School in 1976, he attended the University of Missouri, earning a Bachelor of Science in Agriculture degree in 1980. Among his jobs prior to becoming a state representative were co-owner and president of the farm supply business, Soil Technologies of Missouri. He has also worked for the Missouri Pork Producers Association and Soaring Eagles Ministries, a ministry for homeless persons. Asbury is a former deputy director for the Missouri Department of Agriculture and the current executive director for the Coalition to Protect the Missouri River. He and wife Connie are the parents of 4 children.
Thank you, Mitchell. What a pleasure it is to be here today. A pleasure to be here with not only this crowd, but with these 4 individuals that are here. I hail from a small community called Yates, Missouri. It's 26 people up north of Columbia. We're very small, and for me to have the opportunity to stand on this stage tonight as a candidate for governor is nothing but what this nation can offer any individual. I have with me tonight my wife and my three of my 4 children. My children are why I'm in this race. The opportunities that I've had to pursue dreams, to pursue goals, to pursue life in this nation have been unlimited. My fear is, however, that my children and my grandchild that was announced last week will not be possible. We live in a time where our founding fathers envisioned many things 240 years ago. And we've lost sight of those things. We've lost sight of the principles of our founding fathers. Individualism, rule of law, economic and political freedom. Our president has tried to destroy them and does a very good job in 6 years of doing that. We must return to those 3 things. We must return to those things that gave us success as a nation these some 240 years. When we get off our proven path, we must return. We must return to free market principles that remove government interference from businesses. We must return to the U.S. Constitution as our founding fathers envisioned it. But most of all, folks, we must return to God. No party, no man, no person, no woman can turn this country around short of turning back to God. If we will do that, and if we will also apply free market principles and support the Constitution, we will take our country back. Thank you.
Again, thank you to all of you for joining us this evening. We will now proceed to the question portion of the forum. Mr. Brunner, as governor, how would you have handled the state's response to Ferguson riots last summer and fall?
Well, first of all, with Ferguson, you got to show up. And that's what Marines do, and that's what leaders do. And I met your Chief Whiteley here shortly as I came in the door. And I said, Chief, we could have used you up there in Ferguson. And he in his humble way said, well, I don't know. He said, but, you know, I do have an opinion. And I said, well, that's a lot more than the governor had. You know, folks, it's all about law and order. The fundamentals to our liberty is protection of our lives and our property. My factory is about 5 miles from Ferguson, an area significantly worse. Ferguson is a garden spot compared to where I spent 3 decades here. And we must protect the lives and property of the citizens and do the job right. Number 1, you have to have a clear accountability and a chain of command. Number 2, you have to be sure that you have the rules of engagement in terms of how things work, in terms of the what-if scenarios, just as you do in the military. If this happens, then we move in that area. If that happens, we move in that area. The third thing you have to do in pulling people together, you have to take big things and make them small and divide each corridor into the right area. There's a lot that can be done. It just takes leadership and turning to good people like your chief. We're ready here to get the job done. I'm ready to lead.
Senator Dixon, thank you. Well, let me tell you what I did. I went there. I waited a couple of days and I called my colleagues and I said, I want to come. I said I have 3 conditions. No interviews, I will not protest, and I will not be introduced as a senator. I care about your community. I went. I spent 1 day walking all over the place, talking to all kinds of folks, touring the city. I spent another day talking to protesters. One night, I met a lady who just got off work at the VA who was a proud Marxist, as she told me. See, talking to people is the first thing we have to do. The third day, I was in church with some elected officials from that area. In discussing things, I learned a lot about the needs, people that love their community. Education is a big problem, but they love their community. In talking with the Highway Patrol, I learned that we were very close to an inner city war. That's why the National Guard didn't get sent in. It was a tinderbox. You must have law and order before you have anything. And I have the awards on my wall from the police chiefs, the Sheriff's Association, and the prosecutors to show that I can work with everyone to get that done. Thank you.
Lieutenant Governor Kendrick.
I would have done 180 degrees opposite of what Jay Dixon did. That's my answer. You know that from my appearances on Fox News, where I was the only Republican who they seemed to want to interview, who stood up and called Jay Dixon out. And I reserve the right to disagree with my friends to my right. John Brunner is my friend, but I don't believe it's true that Jay Dixon had no opinions. He had one opinion when he told us that he demanded a vigorous prosecution of Darren Wilson. That was a disgrace. I disagree with my friend Bob Dixon on another point, that there were, what was it you said? Okay. I will simply say that I've been to Ferguson on many occasions to worship with, in the churches up there with my African-American friends. I was there yesterday with Dr. Ben Carson for most of the day. You have to develop relationships in the community, and I would have been there the night after the trouble happened. I would have used the National Guard. I do believe the National Guard should have been used, and the reason they were not used by the governor is because he was leaned on by Valerie Jarrett and Eric Holder from the Obama administration, and that was a catastrophe for the state of Missouri. I've met with the shop owners up there, many of whom are minorities, who wonder why the Guard was at Lambert Airport and Bush Stadium and the Galleria Mall and Clayton, but not along those poor shopkeepers who were burned out. That was wrong, and my approach would be the exact opposite.
Okay. Ms. Hanaway. Sorry about that.
Thank you. Governor Nixon embarrassed our state in his handling of Ferguson. He did virtually everything wrong. He prejudged the facts. He prejudged law enforcement. He created an atmosphere of hysteria by calling out the National Guard but not using it. I would have done everything differently. I am a former prosecutor. I've worked with the men and women in law enforcement who put their lives at risk for us. I've also worked with those community members. I, too, would have gone there. Jay Nixon stayed holed up in Jefferson City while that community burned, while kids missed school, while businesses were destroyed. So I would have worked arm in arm, side by side, with the men and women in that community, with law enforcement in that community. I would have set a reasonable curfew of 9 p.m., not midnight. I would have used the intelligence that law enforcement was gathering to make sure that we drove the out-of-state thugs out that were creating chaos in those communities. And I would have not only called up the National Guard, I would have used the National Guard. But there's somebody else we need to watch in this debate. The chief state law enforcement official, when all this happened, was the guy who wants to be governor, the Democrat who wants to be governor, Chris Koster. And I ask you to ask, where was he when Ferguson burned? Who was he prosecuted for rioting, or for arson, or for looting? If he can't do the job he has, we sure shouldn't promote him to governor. Thank you.
Thank you. Life is all about relationships, and as many people have said here, relationships are key in this situation. We've already begun to attempt to build relationships in the inner cities as well, because we recognize that you have to be in a situation where trust is established. Jay Dixon had no trust for anyone. When I was a state representative in Jefferson City, the Democrats in the legislature did not even trust Jay Dixon. The minorities certainly didn't trust him. So when this blew up, he was in a situation where he had no influences he could go to in that area to call on to assist him to bring calm. He also wasn't boots on the ground. We need to be boots on the ground in those situations to work with law enforcement that is there so that we can coordinate with them and so that they know that we have their back when they go out on the street to do their job. He also didn't practice mouth discipline. There's a scripture, Proverbs 10:19, that says, where words are many, sin is not absent. How many times did he sin with his mouth? And sinned when he threw Darren Wilson under the bus. Folks, people in this country are innocent until proven guilty, but he added fuel to the fire, no pun intended, when he threw him under that bus that evening. Finally, I would welcome peaceful protest. But in the event of protest that become violent, where there's destruction and looting of property, I would end it immediately with the National Guard. Not only would I call them in, I would use them.
Thank you. Senator Dixon, do you think Missouri has an ethics problem in Jefferson City? If so, how would you go about addressing it as governor?
Thank you, Mitch. There's no question that we have an ethics problem in Jefferson City. And there have been numerous attempts and versions of ethics reform. And some tonight may advocate additional ethics laws. I'm a conservative, and I think that we have enough laws. We have 4 statute votes in 1959. There are over 23, 24 when we do the printing next year. The answer is not more ethics laws. We need more ethical people. We need people in Jefferson City with a moral compass to do even better than what the law is. We know, well, there's no question we have an ethics problem. If we can send people to Jefferson City who will abide by that inner moral compass and truly represent the ethics from the community that they come from with accountability, that is how we clean up the mess. And I hope we can do that. Thank you.
Lieutenant Governor Kennedy.
I agree we face ethical challenges that must be addressed. I politely reserve the right to disagree with the previous speaker. I think we do need a new bill. I believe that you're going to have that leadership from right here in Butler County from the Speaker of the House, Todd Richards. I've spoken to Todd about the components of a proposal that will be put forward as soon as the legislature convenes in January. I will be working with Todd to pass that bill. I believe it should contain new laws and new restrictions on a revolving door that stops lawmakers from leaving one day and picking up the lobbyist's client the next day, who they may have helped while they were in the legislature or even in a leadership position. I believe that's wrong. I believe we need a gift ban to go with that, halting the revolving door of lawmaker to lobbyist. I also believe that we must restore a sense of personal responsibility in our office holders, and that we all up here and everybody running for office talks the talk of fiscal conservatism. How many walk the walk? I am the only statewide elected official who has returned money unspent out of my office budget that I could have spent legally each one of the 10 years I've been lieutenant governor. This year I returned $60,000 unspent back to the taxpayers because I found that you can do more with less. That's my approach to ethics reform.
Ms. Hanaway.
Thank you. When you're elected to office, the public puts its trust in you, and you take an oath that says you'll uphold the Constitution and conduct yourself faithfully. I don't think there's anything in that oath that makes it faithful to abuse your power, chase skirts, have wild parties in the Capitol. We have got to end the shenanigans in Jefferson City. When I was Speaker of the House, we did. In fact, the St. Louis Post-Dispatch, which is no friend of mine, actually ran a front page story saying that praying had replaced partying in the state capitol. I agree with Lieutenant Governor Kinder that we need some rules changes, and I would include in that we should not have a revolving door where legislators can go right out to be lobbyists. I think we should have limitations on the gifts that lobbyists can give to legislators. I also think we need truth in campaign financing. If you say you're going to run for a particular office and then you don't, You should have to return the money you raise to your contributors, not just keep it. But I don't think that new rules are going to fix the real rot in Jefferson City. I think the only way to fix the real rot in Jefferson City is to elect moral people who are willing to stand up for their values. If I'm elected governor, I won't tolerate, and I certainly won't reward what's been happening in Jefferson City. I've cleaned it up once. I can't wait to do it again.
Mr. Asbury.
There is a need, there is a need for ethics reform in Jefferson City. As a state representative, I had the opportunity to see firsthand the abuses that were there, even when I was there in 2011 and 2012. I agree with the others that we do need a law to be put in place, and that we need to do away with the conflict of interest where people are coming out from being in a position and moving immediately into a lobbyist position. In addition to that, we need to totally do away with all the lobbyist gifts. Meals, tickets, everything. Folks, the perception is that folks are being bought in Jefferson City, and each and every time that the newspaper runs an ad or an advertisement or a story that shows that somebody's taken $2,500, $3,000, $5,000, $10,000 in gifts, that takes away from what people believe is needed there. They lose trust. Folks, this is a hard issue. It's a heart issue. And people need to be accountable to themselves. They need to be responsible to themselves. But when they don't, we need to do a law. Government is put in place to restrain evil. That's one of our roles. And in this particular instance, we need to restrain it through additional laws. That said, we also need to turn away from allowing money to be such a key factor in our races and in who we are. I support no campaign limits. But at the same time, folks, our constituents are seeing that that's taken away from who they are and how they can be represented.
Thank you. Mr. Brunner.
Thank you. Some jobs taken outsider, you get it done. I've not been part of the government in Jefferson City, but I can tell you from personal experiences, I've traveled all over this country as a salesperson and as a manufacturer, but selling our products to retailers all across the country. Everywhere from Seattle to Miami to New York to Los Angeles. And I've personally experienced a loss of business by failure to participate in giving gifts, golf clubs, shoes, all these issues. I've lost business because I failed to participate in this. And I've seen really firsthand an entire industry change when Walmart took the lead and said no to everything. I mean, no to a cup of coffee, no to a newspaper, no to a burger, no to a lunch, no to ball tickets. And all of a sudden, it elevated the whole exchange, the whole way everybody did business. And it was refreshing. It was wonderful. Now, most of the people in Jefferson City are decent and good people. And it's always the few that ruin it for everybody else. These new ethics laws need to be passed for the few and set new standards and ensure that no representative gets anything from a lobbyist. And I know as governor, I will not take a gift, and everyone who works in my administration will not take a gift, and I'm sure Todd Richardson will lead the way in the state legislature.
Thank you. Lieutenant Governor Pender, what is the most pressing problem in state government, and how would your administration address it on day one?
The most pressing problem in state government is our state's lagging business climate, and I would push for passage of freedom to work on day one if we don't override it this coming Wednesday, which I'm committed to and have been working all spring and all summer on around the state. Second to that is the problem of Ferguson. Ferguson was a 6-month-long catastrophe for our state, and not just for the St. Louis region, but for the whole state. A deep wound in our reputation, nationally and internationally. And we need a governor who will stand behind our law enforcement. And as I travel across this state, I meet law enforcement in every corner, and I did yesterday in Ferguson. Some of their detectives came up to me and they said, "We know you're with us, and so we're wishing you well in your campaign for governor." We need a governor who will stand behind our law enforcement, local, our highway patrol, and our good men and women trained in the National Guard to do the jobs they were trained for. And that's the kind of strong leadership we need to return. We also need to reduce tax burdens on our job creators in the state. We are surrounded by 6 states that are cutting taxes. And Missouri is not an island. We must be responsive and competitive. Right now we are not, because of missing leadership in the executive branch.
The biggest problem facing Missouri is that we need to get back to work. We're losing the competition for jobs to the rest of the country. On day one, I would freeze every new regulation in Missouri until we can understand what's on the books. I'd go to the legislature, work to pass right to work, reduce taxes, and also to bring an end to the frivolous lawsuits we have costing every business more money. But you know, jobs are a means to an end. They're a means to security for your family, to self-reliance. So not only do we need to have more jobs in Missouri, but we need to have more people working in Missouri. So I'm also going to work on a path to get those who've permanently been on welfare off of welfare and back to the work, so that we have more people pulling the wagon and fewer people riding in it. Because through that, we can have a great future in this state. If we put every able-bodied person back to work, to have the opportunity for that self-reliance, to restore the dignity of work to every Missouri family. If we don't do these things, we're not going to keep our kids here in Missouri. They're going to look to other states for opportunities. So it's pretty simple. We've got to pass right to work. We've got to reduce the regulatory burden. We've got to reduce the number of frivolous lawsuits. And we have to have a governor who's willing to go out and tell the world that we have great people here in Missouri. Please bring your business here.
Mr. Asbury.
I see 3 courses here. First, we must defund Planned Parenthood because of the important things we've seen in the videos here recently. Second, we must eliminate Common Core for what impact it will have on our kids in the educational realm of the public schools. But I also agree with the business issues that are at hand. Right now, we have no strategic plan in the state of Missouri, at least Governor Nixon doesn't, regarding businesses. Our small businesses are the foundation of our economy. And in strengthening those businesses and coming alongside them with court reform, tort reform, the passage of right to work, lost my train of thought there. We can do what needs to be done to hold the folks accountable that are in a situation that they can't strengthen their business without this. We have to go forward with a strategic plan for this to happen, and in so doing, as that comes together, that will be something we've not had in the previous years, but something that will give us a roadmap for the future.
Mr. Brunner.
It's jobs, my friend. It's the future of our kids. It's our dreams. It's American dream. Compared to Chris Koster as a trial lawyer, he's a threat to businesses and small farmers. I've actually been in business. Started with 30, 40 people. Rolled the ups and downs. Within the 5th day of coming to work at a small family business, the FDA showed up, wanted to shut us down. We also need a good attorney general. Together, we'll kick these regulators back across the Potomac where they belong. I tell you, folks, I will fight for the jobs because I have been in the job market. I have created the jobs. I've worked hard. I've struggled. I've had all the ups and downs. I know it from the bottom of my heart. I will be an advocate. I don't need to bring in consultants. I don't need to bring in experts. When someone says they're having a problem, well, why can't we get the jobs in Missouri? They're speaking for somebody who's actually been there and done it. We start getting the jobs back, that solves all the social problems. As Ronald Reagan said, the best social problem is a job. Folks, we can get it back. I know we can. The last time we had a business person as governor of Missouri was 1936. It's time to bring a business person back in and get the jobs going here in Missouri, fighting for the small farmers, the small ranchers, the retailers, everyone across the state. I'm ready to get to work.
Senator Dixon.
Let me tell you what I've done today. That'll tell you what issues I'm concerned about. Regulatory reform. 3 years ago, I passed the first ever, it is now law, the first ever bill that will put every state regulation, top to bottom, under review, a rolling 5-year review, and the first time ever that there's public comment on an existing regulation. We're already starting to get some off the books. Shrinking government. Just this summer, my bill to reduce government and eliminate a number of boards and commissions was signed into law. And other meaningful reforms. It's not just right to work. By the way, I'm the only one up here who has ever cast a public vote in support of right to work. It's also litigation reform. It's taxation reform. I supported both of those, and actually this year passed the Taxpayer Advocacy Act, which will put the state tax code under full review for the first time since 1968 with citizens on the commission. First time since 1968, the year before I was born. Taxation reform, litigation reform, and regulation reform. That is how we get the state boot off of the neck of business. That is who creates jobs, and we'll get it done. Thank you.
Ms. Hanaway, why are you the Republican Party's best chance at capturing the governor's mansion in 2016?
Thank you for that question. You know, I think that we have to put forward a candidate who brings together the right experience, the right vision, and the right team. I've been building this team for well over a year. We have volunteers in every Missouri county. I'm confident that we're going to have a terrific organization. So I really want to focus on, for a moment, the guy we're all going to be running against, Chris Koster. He's the Democrats' only candidate. He's won 2 statewide elections based on one argument, that he was more experienced than the Republican. Some of you might remember his ads. He said he was all prosecutor and no politics. Well, I've been a prosecutor. I've been Speaker of the House. I've been a mom. I've stayed up nights and worried about a sick kid, or gone to a parent-teacher conference. Sometimes they go great, sometimes they don't. We're about to save for college, well, we are saving for college. Our daughter's a senior in high school. I've lived the same real-world problems that you have. I think if we put up a candidate who can say, yes, I have experience in government, but I have a vision based on my experiences in the real world for how to make Missouri better. Not only to create jobs here, we've got to create jobs here, but as I said, that's a means to an end. If we create more jobs, we can afford better schools, we can afford better roads, we can have a better state. Thank you.
Mr. Asbury.
As a former farmer, a former business owner, a former state representative and county commissioner that's taken tough votes, I've paid payrolls. As a former deputy director at the Missouri Department of Agriculture, being the administrative leader there, I've had the opportunity to oversee 350 employees and an $18 million budget. For the past 14 years, I've worked federal policy issues on the Missouri River, protecting economic interests from Endangered Species Act issues. Those 4 issues allow me to look at government from a different perspective, from 4 different angles. I've looked in from the outside, I've been there making the votes, I've paid the payroll, and I've run a bureaucracy. I understand what is needed, when it's needed, what is not needed, and why it's not needed, and I'll go there and I'll do what's right for the reason that is right, as opposed to do what's right for a political purpose. Folks' experience counts, leadership matters. I have a vision for the state of Missouri, and I look forward to implementing it and doing that through the experience that I bring to the table.
Mr. Brunner.
My friends, we've got a tough battle ahead against Chris Koster. He's building a tremendous campaign fund. The opposition is unified. If this right to work doesn't pass, millions of dollars are going to come into this state to be sure they get a Democrat governor. And if they try to elect a Democrat governor, there's offices all across the state that are at risk. The only way we can beat Chris Koster is have a candidate that is so much better, so much different, a true CEO. The context of a trial lawyer and a politician against an executive and a business person, a manufacturer who makes things in America. A guy who the first 20 years out of college made less than $30,000 a year, had car payments and house payments and raised a family, rode up and down and no one ever lost an hour of work. We need a CEO for governor of Missouri. A CEO against a trial lawyer is an unbeatable combination. I'm looking forward to be your CEO and lead this state. That's why John Brunner is going to be the best candidate for governor here in Missouri.
Chris Koster is all politician and no leadership. That's the problem. I want to offer you statesmanship. When I worked with my colleagues across the aisle to craft sensible conservative solutions to our criminal code and do the first revision to the entire state criminal code in 35 years, Chris Koster did not say a word until it was over.
Ask yourself, has any other candidate before you won a statewide election? The answer is no. I have been humbled to be honored by the voters of Missouri to win 3 times. 2 of those times I won when no other candidate won on our ticket. In 2008 and 2008 and 12, there were 11 candidates. I'm the only winner. Now, why would that be? Because I show up. I go to every part of the state. I go to the urban core. I ask for their vote. Do I get a majority of them? No. But if Republicans got 18% of the minority vote in the state, there'd be no Democrats elected statewide. That's the way I believe in taking the game to the other side. I can unite the Republican Party, all factions. I have Tea Party support. I have strong conservative support here. I went to Jefferson City where the Democrats had a permanent stranglehold on the legislature. Impregnable fortress, their majorities, pretty much as big against us as we had against them now. I went to work to change that. It took me 8 years, but I led the effort to get the majority in the Senate. I then was honored by being the first Republican Senate President pro tem in 53 years. And the House majority followed about 22 months later, I think in part because of the leadership we showed in the Senate. I have elected more Republicans to the House and Senate across this state, I believe, than any person standing up here today. I have fought for our cause in good times and bad, in good election years and really bad ones. I won in 2004, a great year, and I won in 2008 and 12, really pretty bad years for our team. You have placed your trust in me. I have a vision to lead this state. I have a vision to lead it and to make us the majority governing party in Lincoln that we should be, appealing to the best angels of our nature, as Lincoln said in his first inaugural address. We must be that party, and we must be a party that contests for every vote that is in play, not just folks who look like us and think like us and come to dinners like this. I have proven that in the past, and I humbly ask for your support as I try to take the same message into every county and every precinct, urban and rural, across the great state of Missouri. As we take the game to the other team, we stay on offense, we defeat Chris Koster, and we return Republican leadership to the governor's mansion. Thank you very much.
Ms. Hanaway.
Thank you. I believe that this is a nation of laws and that we need a governor who understands how to uphold the law, how to work with law enforcement, and how much laws matter. And you know, everyone in this room has probably seen these Planned Parenthood videos. They're just about the worst thing I've ever seen. And everyone has a personal reaction to them. But the laws we pass with respect to abortion matter. I know that in a very personal way because one of my heroes is a woman I've never met who 13 years ago, a little bit over 13 years ago, chose not to have an abortion. She lives half a world away, but because of her, that little boy that's just sitting down in the blue shirt is our son today. So if I get the privilege of taking the oath of office as your governor, I'll have the Constitution in my head, my hand on the Bible, but in my heart, I'll have a moment that involves him. And it's that moment that we came back from Eastern Europe with him at the age of 17 months old, and the customs agent said to us, "Congratulations, your son's an American." You probably heard that word a million times. I never heard it in my heart the same way as I did in that moment. Because I knew that the laws of this nation, the Constitution of this nation, made it very different from where he'd come from. It meant that he could pray as he chose, work as he chose, raise his children as he chose. And to me, that's the fight we're having. At the White House and for the governor's mansion, we're fighting for our American way of life. So I pledge to you, I'm not running for governor to go to Jeff City just to kind of go along and get along. I'm going there to make real change and restore the American dream. I humbly ask for your vote, your hard work, and your support. Thank you.
Mr. Asbury.
Thank you for the opportunity to be here this evening. My children are here with me tonight, and they're what I'm fighting for. At the same time that I fight for them, though, I fight for your children because I'm afraid that we're going to lose the freedoms that I've had in my lifetime that they may not see. There's a scripture that's paraphrased here that says, "Wide is the road that leads to destruction, narrow is the road that leads to life." Folks, even as Republicans, over time, we have gotten off path. We've taken the wide road with economic issues. We've taken the wide road in some instances on moral issues and on social issues. We must return to the narrow road. And the narrow road is upholding and protecting the U.S. Constitution as a founding fathers envisioned. It is returning to free market principles that will create those jobs that we're all looking to see and to fill. We must also return to God, though, because if we do those first two without repentance, those first two will never fulfill what it is that we need in this country. Our freedoms have eroded quite greatly in recent weeks. And we all know that the only way that we can turn back those freedoms is to turn back to that one that grants us those freedoms: life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. We have an opportunity in this hour to do something as Republicans that we've never done before, possibly. And that is to humble ourselves before a mighty God that will lead us to what He had planned for this nation and for this state. That's to be a city on a hill. I appreciate your support and the opportunity to be here tonight. Thank you.
Thank you all. And on behalf of Butler County and the Butler County Republican Central Committee, thank you for appearing at tonight's forum and sharing your vision for Missouri with us.